Better stop there. Hello?
Ravindra, 1 second.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Alfred, can you hear me?
Yeah, I am able to hear you.
Ravindra can make a trainer.
Oh, okay.
Alfred, unmute and talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Okay. I'm making you a presenter, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Ravindra is there, Alfred. You can give the station for Ravindra.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Raghavendra, right?
Ravindra.
Okay.
Ravindra.
Okay, so let's start. So this session, I am going to give about a brief intro of mule ESB, why we require ESB, and what are the functionalities, basic functionalities of a mule ESB, specialities of that. So I'm myself Alfred Johnson. So I've been a mule developer for the past almost 6.5 years. So so first of all, to understand this about the mule ESB, I will say anybody who is attending this session, it will be better for him if he is coming from a Java background and if he has already worked with any integration products or any integration platform in service-oriented architecture. It will be very easy to capture the concepts. So can I assume that? I'm waiting for a reply.
Yeah, so how many people are attending this? This is Ravindra.
Only one, Ravindra. You only one. Alfred, only one person is there.
Oh, I'm the only one? Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, I have a lot of SOA experience. I mean, I have 10 years of experience with Oracle and IBM products. So lots of, I mean, there are many projects coming now on the Mule ESB, and I'm working as a consultant and contractor. So I want to get into the Mule ESB also. But actually, I just want to, I don't want the SOA basics because I have years of experience. Mainly I want to mule the concepts and mainly I want to see if you cover any point platform or it's just ESB and what are the, you can go very high technical actually, no fundamentals required.
Okay, so do you have any Java experience down the
Yeah,
line?
yeah, I have a little bit, not much, but yeah, I know
Okay, fine.
Java.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So basically, so as I told before, this whole when the training start, it always focus on any point new application development using Anypoint Studio and its deployment in EE server, Mule EE server, standalone server. So we'll concentrate on that when the actual classes starts. But for today, I will be just explaining the basics of ESB and why we require ESB and particularly Mule ESB. So as you know, service-oriented architecture, this is basically for to connect the heterogeneous systems, right? So we know that if this service-oriented architecture is coming to picture, we will be using some kind of standardized interfaces or some kind of standardized protocols. So we basically use web services, right, for that purpose. We have SOAP and REST web services available, but there is one problem with using the web services for the service-oriented architecture, especially if the integration is point-to-point integration. The problem is that point-to-point integrations won't scale up that high level. It will become very difficult to maintain. Say if you are a big MNC, I mean, if you are a big corporate and you are having a product which interacts with, say, 100 plus other vendors, and each the integration is point to point, you cannot expect that these all point-to-point integrations scale up in a drastic manner depending upon your load, because they point-to-point integrations won't scale up that much. One reason is that how you are throughput at the end, how you can expect your throughput. On each integration, each point-to-point integration, that you cannot assume at the beginning itself. It won't high up. It won't simply go upwards. Maybe it will just be that stagnant. The other point is that the maintenance of this all point-to-point integration will become very difficult once it crosses the hundreds limit. It will become, you don't know which part of integration, which point-to-point integration is faulty, or which one is less performing, which one is low performing. That it will become very messy. So instead of all point-to-point integration, the service, when it comes to a mule ESB, the whole ESB is a kind of enterprise service bus. It's a architectural concept basically. So here we use a special product to act as a service bus and act as an integration component in between all these vendors. So all these connections, all these point-to-point integrations, instead of doing that, it will be communicating to this particular ESP. There are multiple ESBs available in market, like Oracle Fusion ESB, WSO2, Mule ESB. A lot of ESBs available in market, and Mule is the leading ESB because they have their own very active production support and production. They are very innovative in a sense compared to other ESPs. So, and there is one thing. The other thing is that, as you know, in service-oriented architecture, you will always expose your API to other party or other vendor to integrate with. So same concept we will use here. Then, when it comes to a ESB, there is one point, this basic rule is that all the integrations will be happening through the ESB. So ESB will be communicating through all the components. And when it comes to what are all the, what are the benefits of the ESB? I already mentioned that point-to-point integration will be completely removed. And the complete decoupling of each integration systems, like say if you are using even if you are using a SOAP service, web service, you have to maintain that particular WSDL file, WSDL file, and you have to continuously keep a tab on a WSDL file to know that what are all the changes the other party has been made. So these kind of things will be okay. There is to some extent this has to be followed in ESB as well, but we will not be that much concerned while when we use a SOAP. When you will use a ESB instead of a point-to-point integration, because ESB has a lot of component inbuilt into itself. For example, in case of SOAP, there is a SOAP connector. We can use these kind of connectors. At the top level, we call all these components are message processors, and we will use them to interact with other systems. So this is just a diagram of how a mule interact with the other systems. So we have the SOAP connector on the top left hand. You can see there is a DB. This is like a DB connector, and we have a Salesforce connector, Workday connector, RESTful web service connector, and a file FTP connector. We have a HTTP HTML component. That's also a connector. Like that we have. So if you see which are all the major protocols and major products available in the market, business to business products available in the market, Mule will be having its own connectors. So these are the very few basics of a Mule ESP. So Like HTTP protocol, mule is also stateless. Stateless in a sense, doesn't preserve the state of a particular message. So before that, what is a mule application? A mule application means that I mentioned there will be a lot of message processors which we will get in mule ESP. If you open the Anypoint Studio, you can see a lot of mule what do you say, mule message processors. So these message processors will be connected together, and it forms a flow. It forms a kind of flow. So this flow, what it will do is that it's what one endpoint of the flow, it will accept the external messages. Once it this accept the external messages, those components are called as endpoints, specifically as inbound endpoints. So these inbound endpoints will accept the external messages and convert it as a mule message. And all throughout the flow, mule will act on this mule particular message. So this mule message, okay, all the action will be happening on a mule message. So if you fire a HTTP request, okay, it is coming to a mule application. What will happen is that an HTTP connector will be sitting at the front of the flow, at the beginning of this flow. This HTTP connector will be acting as an inbound endpoint. So there is a fundamental difference between a connector and an endpoint. Connector means any mule processor which we can see available in your mule Anypoint Studio. I will show you that later in this session only. But when it comes to a part of the flow at the beginning or the end, this becomes an endpoint which will the mule message will enter into the mule application or leaves the mule application through these endpoints. So that is a basic difference between a connector and an endpoint. So connectors can sometimes happen in between the flow. At that point, it may not be act as an endpoint. So HTTP connector, there's a very common connector if you use to accept a HTTP request. HTTP is a stateless protocol. It doesn't mean the state of any message. Similarly, mule is also a stateless architecture or stateless product. So if you want a particular state, that state has to be embedded within a message, within the mule message, while passing through that particular flow. And this is all the mule applications will be developed using Anypoint Studio. That is, Anypoint Studio is something like, if you have worked on Java environment, you might have known this Eclipse. Eclipse is a tool used to develop Java applications. So Anypoint Studio is a customized version of Eclipse. It has more features, especially a graphical interface, and a lot of other features from that Eclipse. But it's built based upon the Eclipse. It has developed by the Mule team. So all the Mule applications will be developed using Anypoint Studio, and these applications will be generally deployed in a Mule ESP server. This ESP, in a sense, standalone server. There can be two ways of deployment, either in a Mule Enterprise Edition standalone server or in a Cloud Hub. Cloud Hub is their cloud platform. And one cool thing about the Anypoint Studio is that you will get a embedded Mule Enterprise Edition server along with the Anypoint Studio. That means if you want to know how your application that is work in progress thing, that is on the development stage, how it is performed or how it is acting, you can actually do that within the Anypoint Studio itself. You can run your application, you can know, you can debug your application within the Anypoint Studio. So that is one feature that you will not get in any of the Eclipse, any versions of the Eclipse. If you want to know how your application performs, you have to either deploy it and you have to remote debug it. There's no need for that because the Mule ESP Mule Anypoint Studio contains embedded Enterprise Edition server, Mule ESP server. You will get that feature and you can run that application in the Mule Anypoint Studio itself. So till now I am clear. Any doubts, any questions from your end?
No, I'm okay.
So, so this is the basic things, your basic prerequisites to run Anypoint Studio and Mule ESP. One thing is that I'll be covering Mule, Mule Server Edition 3.8. Yeah, Mule is Server Edition 3.8. It's not Anypoint Studio. Anypoint Studio, which I mentioned, it will be 6.2 something. So that requires JDK 8. It's a must for its running. Apache Maven will be included at some part of these sessions if it comments. So Apache Maven, if you know that Apache Maven is basically a build tool, a build and dependency management tool, which frequently used by Java developers at organization level to generate their builds. So same kind of concept you use here, but not for all projects, not for all our demo sessions, because Apache Maven is something you require to basically to generate and manage your build. Without Apache Maven, you can completely learn the Mule and you can you will know what all the. I mean, basically, it's not required. But when it comes to organization level, definitely Apache Maven will be used to manage and to create Mule builds. And obviously, Anypoint Studio will be covered thoroughly for this. So I was mentioning about the Mule message, right? Mule message early, like how a Mule message look, how a Mule message will be generated. So this is the very basic diagram of a Mule message. So if you see that there is a outer envelope which says is a message object, and it says inside you can see a message. There is a inner rectangle which says message. So Mule message, that's an abstract concept. Like message object is an abstract concept. Mule message, actually, when you refer the message object. Mule message object which envelopes actual message and the Mule variables and the exception payload and the attachments. So there is inner rectangle, right, which shows says that message, which it contains a header and a payload. So to analogous to this is like HTTP header and HTTP body. So HTTP, if it comes, if an external message which is coming to Mule system is HTTP, then HTTP headers will come as a Mule headers. So an HTTP payload, that is what all the data you are passing through this payload as a payload in HTTP, not as a payload, but all data you passing through the HTTP, this will come as a payload of the Mule message. You can see inside the header there is one inbound property and there's an outbound property that I'll explain later. And you can see the payload. Payload actually means the business information which you will get from the external system in most of the cases, or you will set this payload depending upon your flow, how your flow perform like that. And there is something called as variable. There are multiple, actually 3 types of variables involved, and there is an exception payload. In case of any exception happening in the particular Mule flow, what should be the exception payload that should be delivered? That will be attached like that. And there is something called as attachment. Extra anything will be coming. That will be coming as an attachment. So this I mentioned in this slide, which is a Mule header and Mule payload, and which is the properties, Mule properties, etc. So,
so every message, I mean, for ESB, the input can be anything, right? Like XML, we can get XML or JSON or HTTP. HTTP.
Correct. So every message.
Formats like a Mule message or Mule ESB does.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Every message, whether it is coming as a JSON input, whether it's coming as a FTP input, everything comes to a Mule flow. A Mule system will be converted as a Mule message at the source, at the beginning of the Mule flow. That will be done by the incoming. Say, if you are using an FTP, if you are reading some file from an external system, you will be using a FTP connector, right? At that point, this FTP connector will make this Mule message at the beginning of the flow. So because this is a basic unit of work, you can say exactly like that. Mule message is a basic unit for work. On top of that, mule flows will act. Okay. So saying that, any other questions from your end?
Yeah, I got this. And the Mule ESB server, is it like a WebLogic server? I mean, with all the capabilities, like creating JMS queues and everything, or is only like
No. See, there is a philosophical difference between a Mule ESP server and a WebLogic server. The difference is that WebLogic is a fully developed application server where you can manage all your web applications, all the Java EE stack applications like EJB applications,
yeah, that's correct.
everything like that. That used for a different purpose as well, right? So Mule ESP Enterprise Edition server, it's not a pure application server. It's not even an application server in a Java sense. It is basically a enterprise server, enterprise level server. Only host Mule applications or Mule builds. It will what we deploy in a Mule application server is always Mule builds, nothing else. Okay. So Mule builds we will generate from our Anypoint Studio and we will deploy that in a Mule Enterprise Edition server. So only that thing will, so Mule server, because that is how Mule server will come into picture, because all the purpose of Mule server is to host Mule applications and to facilitate the integration between different components, right? So it doesn't need not to act, it doesn't need not to serve any other EJP applications or var builds, nothing like that, or any other kind. So it always hosts Mule builds and always hosts Mule applications. That's it.
Oh, okay. So if I want to create a queue, so I have to go to external systems or what? I mean, for example, JMS queue, I can kind of have inside in case of OSB, Oracle Service Bus and WebLogic. So since both OSB and JMS runs in the same server, it's easy to connect, and they have a lot of connectors are there within server connections.
Yeah, correct. So if you want,
yeah, go ahead.
If you want to create a JMS queue, so you can have you will make a choice, like whether you what kind of implementation you want. You want ActiveMQ or you want anything else. There are a lot of things available. So you will create your queue, and okay, your system, your particular queue has to interact with other components. Say I am a vendor. I have a Salesforce account. I created a new new order info in my Salesforce account. So automatically this should trigger, this should place a particular, what do you say, a particular order entity into a queue. So how you can achieve that? Consider that scenario. I am a vendor who is having a Salesforce account. I created one order info in Salesforce. This should place a order, or this should create a order, place a order in a queue so that it can be processed by another systems. So in these kind of scenarios, Mule will come to help. So how Mule will come to help? Mule will, there is a Salesforce connector for Mule end. So this from Mule end. So this Salesforce connector which will connect to your Salesforce account, and based upon, okay, this particular event has been created, this particular order info created. So automatically this will trigger a message to the Salesforce connector, and once it receives Mule receives a Salesforce through a Mule message through a Salesforce connector, what it will do is that it will